My FIL declared I wasn't welcome at their family estate anymore, saying, "Only blood deserves legacy." My husband nodded, sliding the will toward him. I stood slowly and whispered, "You should read page 12 again." When he did, he gasped and screamed because. My name's Rachel. I married Nate Holt 10 years ago. We lived in Asheville, North Carolina, where his family's been rich for generations. Old money. The Holts have a huge estate up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and they acted like they were American royalty. His dad, Gregory Holt, ran things like a dictator. He was the kind of man who believed money was power and family was just an extension of that power. If you weren't blood, you didn't matter. I knew I wasn't his favorite. From the first time we met, Gregory looked at me like I didn't belong. I wasn't born rich. I grew up in a working-class family outside Raleigh. My dad was a mechanic, my mom worked at a diner. Gregory never said anything directly insulting, but it was always little comments. "She talks like someone from the flats. She's got hustle, but she's not one of us." Nate didn't say much about it. He just told me to let it go. That it was how his dad was. Over time, I got used to being ignored or looked down on. But I stuck around because I believed in Nate. I thought we were a team. The truth was, I was playing checkers. They were playing chess. When Nate's mom, Doris, got sick with cancer, I stepped up. I was the one who sat with her at the hospital. Becca, Nate's sister, showed up maybe once a month. Sam, his brother, was too busy with business in Charlotte. Gregory refused to look weak and barely visited at all. I was there. I took care of her meds, cleaned her up, stayed through the night when hospice started. She told me once, in a rare clear moment, "You're the only one who loves without asking for something." That stuck with me. She passed a few months later. Then Gregory's health started failing. Heart problems, stress, and frankly, bitterness. He didn't go gently. He got nastier. Meaner. He called me by the wrong name on purpose. Told Nate to clean up this mess when I walked into a room. And then, he died. I wasn't sad. That sounds harsh, but it's true. He never treated me like a person. Just someone who didn't belong in the Holt bloodline. His will was read 2 weeks later at the Mountain Estate. The place was straight out of a movie. Long driveway, stone pillars, too many rooms. It felt cold, like the man himself. We all gathered in the study. Dark wood walls, books that had never been read, and a big portrait of Gregory over the fireplace. Mr. Whitaker, the lawyer, was old and stiff. He wore a dark gray suit and carried a leather folder like it held the keys to heaven. Nate stood next to me but hadn't said much since the funeral. When the will reading began, I expected the usual, dividing assets, charity donations, that kind of thing. But when Whitaker got to the part about the estate, I knew something was off. He said, "Gregory Holt leaves the Holt estate, including all family properties, to his children, to remain within the Holt bloodline. These assets are not to be shared with, divided among, or claimed by any non-blood relatives." Then he paused, looked at me. "And as per his direct request, Rachel Holt is no longer permitted to reside, visit, or participate in the Holt family estate or its holdings. Quote, only blood deserves legacy." My mouth went dry. Before I could say anything, Nate just calmly slid the will back toward Mr. Whitaker and nodded. Like he already knew. That was when I stood up. I felt my legs shaking, but I kept my voice steady. "You should read page 12 again." Everyone froze. Whitaker raised an eyebrow. Nate looked confused. Becca rolled her eyes. But Whitaker flipped through the pages and got to it. I saw his face change. His mouth opened slightly. Then he looked at Nate. "Did you sign this?" Nate stepped forward, confused. He looked at the page. As his eyes moved down, his face turned pale. It was the amendment. Page 12. 2 years ago, after Nate cheated on me with a coworker from his firm, I didn't leave. I should have. But I wanted to protect myself. So I worked with our lawyer and had Nate sign an amendment to the family trust. He was scared Gregory would find out and ruin his career, so he signed without reading much. The amendment said, in the event of any attempt to remove or disinherit Rachel Holt from Holt assets, all rights and holdings shall transfer to Rachel Holt upon confirmation of betrayal, infidelity, or emotional abuse, with this clause superseding all prior instructions or inheritance conditions. And it was signed. By him. Notarized. Filed. Whitaker cleared his throat. Legally, this overrides Gregory Holt's will. What the hell is this? Nate snapped, looking at me like I'd set a trap. You remember, I said. It was right after I caught you with Megan. You signed to avoid a scandal. I told you it was just to protect me in case your dad ever went nuclear. He looked like he wanted to hit something. Becca started yelling, saying it was fraud. Sam walked out. He couldn't deal. Whitaker shut his folder and said, as it stands now, Rachel Holt is the legal owner of the Holt estate and all associated properties. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just walked over, took the key to the estate from the desk, and said, I'm staying tonight. Anyone not on my list can find a hotel. Nate didn't follow me. He didn't come home. That was the day everything changed. I didn't sleep much that first night in the estate. The house was quiet. Too quiet. But not peaceful. You know that feeling when you're in a place that doesn't want you there? That's how it felt. The walls still carried his voice. That heavy silence, like Gregory Holt could walk back in and throw me out himself. But I stayed. The next morning, I had the locks changed. Nate tried calling. I let it ring. Becca showed up that afternoon. She banged on the door like a cop. You can't do this, she screamed from the porch. This isn't yours. You're a damn outsider. I opened the door just enough to speak through the crack. Call Whitaker. Or your lawyer. Or anyone you want. But you're not getting in. She called me a gold digger. Said I'd tricked her brother. That I didn't care about family legacy. I didn't argue. I just shut the door. That week, I went through everything. Paperwork, deeds, financials. You wouldn't believe how much the Holts were hiding. They had offshore accounts. Fake charities. Old lawsuits they buried with hush money. And they were in more debt than I thought. Turns out the legacy Gregory protected so fiercely was barely holding together. I called my own accountant, hired an investigator, and started getting the books in order. Then I found something worse. Nate and Gregory had quietly tried to sell one of the Charleston properties, illegally. They had forged signatures. Mine included. I had proof. My name on documents I never signed. It wasn't just betrayal. It was fraud. And if I had never forced Whitaker to pull out that page 12 clause, they would have gotten away with it. I filed a report. Quietly. The investigator also found records of payments to Nate's coworker, Megan. Large transfers. Over $40,000 in less than a year. She wasn't just an affair. She was being kept. Bought. When I confronted Nate, he finally showed his real face. He came storming into my office downtown after I had the estate placed under security. You think you won? He said, leaning over my desk. You think taking a bunch of cold stone and would make you part of this family? I never wanted to be part of your family, I said calmly. I just wanted to stop being treated like trash. You ruined us, he hissed. My dad's name, our reputation, no, I said, pulling out the folder. You did that. When you slept around. When you stole. When you tried to wipe me out with a fake will. I just made sure the truth got heard. He looked down at the folder. I slid it across the desk. Evidence, I said. Forgery. Wire fraud. I haven't turned it in yet. He stared at me. Then he laughed. You wouldn't dare. I leaned back. Try me. He left. I haven't seen him in person since. But then I got a letter. From Gregory's longtime business partner. A man named Martin Keene. He invited me to lunch. I was cautious. but I went. We met at a small restaurant outside Asheville. Martin was in his 70s, sharp as a blade, and more honest than I expected. I never liked Gregory, he said. But he was good at business. Cold, but smart. He didn't trust anyone. I know, I said. He looked me in the eye. He kept a second set of documents. Just in case someone ever tried to take what he built. You're not safe yet. I felt the blood drain from my face. What do you mean? He pulled out a small flash drive and set it on the table. There's a shell corporation listed as owner on several properties, including this estate. And guess who the named successor is? I picked up the drive. Megan, he said. Your husband's mistress. That was the moment everything shifted again. This wasn't over. Not even close. I stared at the flash drive on the table, not moving, not speaking. Martin sipped his coffee like he hadn't just dropped a bomb. You're telling me, I said slowly, my husband, ex-husband soon, and his mistress are trying to take over Holt Properties through a fake company? He nodded. Gregory set up that shell company years ago. It was part of his plan to protect the estate from taxes. But he never told the family he named Megan as successor. Probably planned to change it later. He just never got the chance. My stomach turned. So even though the will gave everything to me, I said, there's a company out there on paper that technically owns parts of what's now mine, and she's the listed owner? Martin nodded again. She hasn't done anything with it yet. Probably doesn't even know. But if someone tells her, that someone could easily be Nate. I drove straight back to the estate and pulled in every legal contact I had. Within 2 days, my lawyer filed an emergency injunction to freeze the shell company's assets. We had to act fast, before Megan, or Nate, made a move. But I was too late. 3 days later, a notice was taped to the estate gate. Megan had filed a lawsuit. She was claiming partial ownership of the estate through the company Gregory created, saying she was his trusted business successor. Bull. But dangerous bull. Her claim was weak, but it was enough to tie up the property in court. And just like that, I was back under siege. This time, not by the family who hated me, but by the woman my husband betrayed me with. I didn't sleep for days. I kept reading over the documents, digging through Gregory's files. I couldn't let her take what I'd already fought so hard for. But then, something strange happened. The investigator I'd hired, the same one who found the forged signatures, called me. I think you need to come see this for yourself, he said. I drove into Asheville and met him at his office. He handed me a folder. Inside were photos. Emails. Bank statements. Megan wasn't just sleeping with Nate. She had been involved with Gregory too. Years ago. There were messages. Wire transfers. Records of her traveling with him to business meetings. Not just as an assistant, but personal. And not long before Gregory died, he made a cash transfer to her. A large one. Almost $200,000. Why? And more importantly, did Nate know? I felt sick. I left the office in a daze. Drove straight up to the mountain estate. And I sat there, staring out over the porch, wondering how deep this hole went. Wondering if any of the Holts were ever loyal to each other. Or if I'd been the only fool who believed in family. But here's the twist no one saw coming. That night, I got a call. From Sam, Nate's brother. The one who stormed out during the will reading and hadn't spoken since. He sounded drunk. Or just tired. I know what they're doing, he said. And I want in. What are you talking about? They're trying to wipe you out, Rachel. Megan, Nate, maybe Becca too. But they don't know what I found. If you help me, I'll help you. Help you how? He sighed. Gregory had more than one will. Sam came to the estate the next morning, hungover, eyes bloodshot, holding a worn leather folder under his arm. We sat in the study, across from the fireplace where Gregory's portrait used to hang. I had it taken down the week before and dumped it in the basement. Sam dropped the folder on the table. This is what Gregory never wanted anyone to see. Inside was a second will. Not notarized, not filed. But real. It was handwritten, signed by Gregory 6 months before his death. It named Megan, yes, that Megan, as the sole heir to the business. Not the estate, not the land, but the whole business accounts. He'd set up accounts under a different name. Silent Holdings. Offshore. Hidden from the rest of the family. I felt like throwing up. He was preparing to cut all of us out, Sam said. Except her. I don't know why. Maybe he was sleeping with her. Maybe she just knew too much. But this was going to be her payoff. So why are you giving it to me? He stared at me. Because Becca and Nate used me. They told me I'd get control of the Charleston house. That we'd split the inheritance once you were out of the picture. I didn't know about this. Not until I went digging. And you want what? A clean slate. 50 grand. That's it. And I want to disappear from this family. I called my lawyer and had the document copied, scanned, and sealed as evidence. The next day, I filed a lawsuit of my own, against Megan. For inheritance fraud, unjust enrichment, and attempted hostile takeover based on a revoked will. With the evidence Sam provided and the documents my investigator found, we painted a full picture. Megan wasn't Gregory's successor. She was a kept secret. Paid off to stay quiet. The moment Gregory died, she tried to twist what little leverage she had into ownership. But none of it held. Then the dominoes fell. We got full access to the offshore accounts. My lawyer traced transfers from Gregory to Megan, and then from Megan to Nate. Money laundering. The same funds they used to try and buy the Charleston house behind my back. It was more than betrayal. It was criminal. I filed charges. And it all went public. Nate was arrested. So was Megan. For wire fraud, conspiracy, and falsifying documents. Becca went down next. We found emails from her trying to manipulate the estate's manager into changing asset titles. She swore she didn't know anything, but the audit showed she received kickbacks. The court froze their assets. All of them. The Mountain Estate, Charleston, every Holt property, all stayed under my name. But that wasn't enough for me. I went further. I released a public statement. Told the truth. Every newspaper in Asheville and Charleston ran it. I wasn't cruel, I didn't call them names. But I laid out everything, the cheating, the lies, the attempted fraud, the forgery. I included hospital records showing I took care of Doris when no one else did. I included the page 12 clause. And Gregory's secret second will. People stopped calling the Holts a legacy. They started calling them a disgrace. 2 months later, I finalized the divorce. Nate tried to get a reduced settlement from prison. He got nothing. I sold the Charleston property and donated part of the proceeds to the hospice that took care of Doris. As for Sam, I paid him the 50 grand and added a condition: he had to leave the state. He did. Haven't heard from him since. Becca? She moved in with some distant cousin in Tennessee. Can't get a job in finance anymore. Too much bad press. Megan and Nate are still locked in legal battles, blaming each other. Both facing prison time. At least one of them's going to do years. And me? I stayed. I fixed up the estate. Tore down Gregory's office and turned it into a community reading room. Installed a garden where his prized golf lawn used to be. Started using the property to host fundraisers for shelters and women's groups. People started seeing the Holt estate differently. People started seeing me differently. But I won't lie and say it didn't change me too. I became colder. Sharper. I had to. Because when someone tells you you're not blood, they think that gives them power. What they don't realize is, blood isn't what builds legacies. Fire does. And I let it burn until there was nothing left of the old family but ash. And then I built something better from it. Mine. Alone. I earned every inch of it. Page 12 wasn't a trap. It was a warning. and they ignored it.